So, why does all of my gear suck in Marathon? If that's a question you've been asking yourself, then hopefully this video will help you out. We got a bunch of tips on how to start earning higher quality rewards, whether it's purple shields, blue and purple weapons, or indeed gold items. Of course, all of these are very juicy looking, and they make us significantly more powerful, but there's a lot of other stuff going on in Marathon. The amount of items that are actually in the game, a difficult survival world where other players are additionally trying to kill you and steal your stuff. My first tip, front and center for Marathon, is to be patient. And I'll explain why in the video, so if you find it useful, a rating really does help us out. Plus, get subscribed for more guides and updates related to Marathon. But now, let's get into it. And before we talk about loot that you can find in the world, which yes, will be one of the best sources for higher tier items, we're going to talk about factions. Now, bear with me on this bit because there are some strategies here that'll make you more powerful without getting poor, right? And so factions offer a lot of rewards in Marathon as well as stat boosts. Focusing on completing your faction contracts is great because of course it will level you up with each of those factions, and many of the faction upgrades will unlock items all the way up to purple and yellow for purchase in the Armory. They also unlock stat upgrades which, especially in the early game, are even more beneficial. So looking at the faction menu, of course, that will help you target your actual objectives, your contracts, as well as your rank rewards at the faction reps, and the upgrade or skill tree. In addition to the faction menu, in the lowdown menu, there's also the Armory tab, and this has a faction dropdown on the left-hand side. That allows you to pick up items that you've unlocked via your faction upgrades by using credits and other items. Plus, factions in the Armory will offer free sponsored kits or pickups, which I think refresh on a daily basis, so be sure to pay attention to those. And of course, through the higher tier faction upgrades, you will get blue, purple, and sometimes yellow items available for purchase in the Armory, but it's worth being aware that while these are pretty tempting, if you buy a lot of items here, you're going to chew through your credit stash pretty quickly, especially if you make these purchases frequently, right? So my recommendation, especially in the early game, would be sure to get your faction contracts done, take the level up rewards from the faction reps, and the free or cheap items from the Armory that you unlock. So, where possible, it is worth avoiding the temptation to blow credits too frequently on upgrades that give rewards and indeed purchasing those actual items in the Armory. That isn't to say you should never do it, obviously, but just be aware of how expensive some of that stuff can be. It's all good picking up a blue or a purple gun or something and spending most of your credits, but when you lose those items on your next run, it can potentially lead to sort of a spiral where you end up a bit poor and then you're kind of trying to scavenge for more currency instead of looting in the world and focusing on contracts where you can ultimately land yourself some free rewards. So that's the first thing I'd say, and in addition to loot from factions, we do unlock a lot of stat upgrades. Now these may not be flashy like a purple gun, but they're arguably easily as powerful over time, right? Because they boost your survivability, reduce heat generation, increase revive speeds, and looting speeds, and a bunch of other things. So another tip, especially in the early part of your progression in Marathon, would be to first focus on buying the faction upgrades that give you these kind of overarching boosts to stats. Stat upgrades will stick with you for the entire season, and ultimately enable you to more easily find the kind of rewards that you're actually looking for during raids, right? So I'd focus on a combination of doing faction upgrades, but also trying to hunt your juicy loot items out in the world. So with all of that said, of course, we still want juicy blue, purple, or gold weapons, shields, backpacks, and all of that. If you want to earn them without going bankrupt, for a really basic overview of how this works, when you're actually during a run, generally, the longer you stay in the world, the more opportunities there will be for higher quality loot. And this is both from players, right, where sticking around and finding other crews and taking them out where you can means you're sort of creating the opportunity for yourself for other players to do the work for you, right? And so as a general rule, if you're running a faction contract and hoping for some good loot in the same run, I'd say it's best to infill and then get your contract objectives done as early as possible so that they're out of the way and you've made some valuable progress. Sometimes contracts will require you to actually exfil in order to complete them, but early contracts often can be completed without requiring a successful extraction. Beyond that, with contract goals out of the way, from here, it's worth looking for opportunities to engage with events in the world and indeed fight other teams. As we mentioned, as runs go on and the timer goes down, you will find more opportunities for challenging encounters in the world, so the general goal here is to survive as long as possible for the best chances of good rewards. Very rarely are you going to find insane loot in the first 5 or 10 minutes, and so it's worth setting up your runs with a priority focus on contracts, followed by a focus on survival and exploration, and that's where world events come in. So I'll give a few examples examples here, and I can't provide a guide for precisely how all of these events work in one video, but a prime example would be priority hostiles. So paying attention to the map, you'll sometimes find targets which are literally highlighted here, such as the Wraith Warden. These encounters are challenging and they feature heavily armored mobs and bosses, plus they'll also draw in other players, so be aware that you could be third-partied by other teams during these encounters. And of course, that presents the same opportunity to you. Wherever events are involved, I would say approach them cautiously, and if you're aware of another team in one of these fights, it's worth doing some recon and trying to strike if you see an enemy crew in trouble. But in the instances where you can take down these world bosses, they have a high chance of dropping blue and purple weapons and shields, and other priority collectibles, high value items that you can sell, as well as keys for locked rooms on various maps, including some that can later be used in the Cryo Archive. Other sort of more minor opportunities include mini events, so sometimes you'll see these boxes with question marks on them. When you engage with them, a whole bunch of UESC will drop in, and these events again have chances to drop higher quality rewards. The same applies to the kind of basic airdrop locations that you'll find, so sometimes you can interact with these, and they'll actually airdrop in locked boxes with a bunch of rewards in. And there is RNG or luck involved in the kind of rewards you get, but they range from green items all the way up to golds. Just keep in mind that the highest tiers are absolutely not guaranteed. So those are some of the more basic events, but getting into more complicated stuff, when you're out in a raid, remember to use the map and listen for announcements. So sometimes you'll have announcements from Oni stating that they've detected a new profit opportunity or a considerable profit opportunity. And when you hear this, it's worth looking at your map, where you'll find new points of interest marked with a blue icon. Again, I can't cover how every one of these events work in the same video. Many of them are still being sort of discovered, but essentially, when you see this blue POI event, these will be some of the most potent PvE opportunities to award higher tier drops. Again, these world events tend to happen later during a run, so there are a variety of encounters you'll find, including things like UESC shipments coming in, where you need to head to the event, fight off a bunch of UESC, and shoot down drop ships for chances at high tier rewards. Another one that you'll encounter on some maps include things like lockdown events. These are more difficult and kind of puzzle oriented, I suppose, and to even engage with the lockdown event, you'll actually need an antivirus kit. Cruiser has a really good gameplay video showing how this event actually works, so I will link that down below, as it's good to just see some raw gameplay of it. I actually only encountered this one once in the server slam and I wasn't really aware of how it worked or how beneficial it would be, but Cruiser's video is totally worth watching if you want to get your head around what you'll need to do for the lockdown event. The primary thing to be aware of though are the announcements for those profit opportunities and the fact that they'll subsequently show up on the map marked with these blue icons. When you begin to engage with these events, you will firstly start to get better, higher quality reward drops from the enemies, but you will also find that you run into more PvP encounters as a result, right? Because these points of interest are being marked for all of the teams on the map. So obviously you can fine tune your kind of farming strategy if you like, but I would say as a general rule, focus on going in to complete a contract. Where possible, get those objectives done as early as you can, and then carefully engage with PvE enemies in general, right? Sometimes it's not worth just shooting at UESC and general trash mobs that ultimately end up with you being more noticeable to enemy players, burning through ammo, medkits, and still not necessarily being likely to actually reward you with stuff that's mega useful. So it's absolutely worth staying patient and of course engaging with other crews as much as you can, in a sense to kind of get them out of the way before more of these profit opportunities actually arise. And so hopefully in terms of a general strategy, this will give newer players a better idea of the kind of loop that you want to engage with in Marathon. And that's absolutely why I referred to having a bit of patience at the start. There's loads of stuff to learn in Marathon, and there are plenty of opportunities to get juicy rewards, but there's also plenty of temptation to spend loads of your currency on upgrades, or indeed reward items from the Armory, which are just too easy to lose until you're kind of stacked with a lot of credits and stuff a bit further on in your progression. So I hope the video has helped out, and where I can, I'll be posting guides on some of the world events that we actually encounter to give a bit more detail on how to survive them and create more opportunities for juicy drops. If you have any tips for other players, drop them in the comments, but if you've enjoyed the video, a rating would really help us out. Be sure as well to hit subscribe and I'll keep you up to date with more content, but otherwise, good luck my friends and I will catch you all very soon. The good luck part also only applies if you're in someone else's lobby. If you're in my lobby, bad luck! Only joking, no I'm not. See ya!